single from evolution. I assume it's about an animal that evolved for the worse. We'll check it out. Ready?
Evolution is a named Emily. That's it. That's the whole intro. Don't get me wrong, the concept of evolution is pretty cool. It's the reason giraffes get to flex their hind the entire
that's Geographic from Toys R Us.
animal kingdom. But there are just times where nature and evolution decide to team up and absolutely hoe an animal's entire
Is that
existence.
ostrich?
So here are 10 animals that I personally think got done the dirtiest. It's not exactly in order, but obviously some animals are going to get violated more flagrantly than others.
Looks like some kind of mythical creature with this kind of stuff coming out of its nose.
And I say that because if this list were actually in order, the octopus would probably medal at the Oppression Olympics for... Well, let me explain. Octopus are highly intelligent and scientists believe they have the same cognitive ability as a 2-year-old human. Which might not seem impressive, but that means octopus are on the same IQ level as some dogs.
Octopus equals dogs. I learned a little bit about octopus and they're scary.
They're even smart enough to use tools, whether it's using the tentacles of the venomous man of war as a weapon, which they actually do, or carrying a coconut around to keep as a travel-sized panic room.
No way! This reminds me of the game I played. What is it called? Like Another Crab's Treasure.
But being smart is the only thing they have going for them. First of all, most octopus come into the world as orphans. The mother octopus will spend months guarding and watching her nursery of up to 50,000 eggs. Since it's
50,000? Look, this is a baby octopus. I didn't know that. They look so cute. This is Chimi octopus.
50,000 eggs.
Oh, those
Since
are
it's
the
too dangerous
eggs.
to leave them alone, and since there's no daycare underwater, she often won't eat the entire time. Which means once the clutch of eggs are finally ready to hatch, the mother is shriveling, starving, and ready to become initials on a Twitter bio. Struggle doesn't end there. In fact, that's when it starts. These babies the size of a grain of rice have to figure out life in an ocean full of animals that'll actually try to put an end to it.
They're small as a grain of rice.
It's so bad that out of the 50,000 children, if more than 2 survive to adulthood, it's considered overachieving.
I'm putting a calculator. 0.004% of success rate.
That honestly wouldn't be a big deal if nature didn't already nerf them with their lifespan. It's so ridiculously short that a majority of octopus species that live life to the fullest still won't be alive for their first birthday. Being an octopus means you can be born on New Year's, have a midlife crisis by June, only to be a memory by October. Giving an animal high intelligence just to cut its life after 1 to 2 years just seems like an intentional dick move.
Oh,
And because they have no shell or no armor, they'd honestly be lucky to live that long.
That's
having
true.
no
They're
real-
so vulnerable.
No way to defend themselves means a good number of them end up a sea lion's chew toy or a dolphin's frisbee. To be
They
fair,
don't have teeth, right?
octopus do have camouflage, in some cases highly toxic venom, but for the most part they get bodied by most of the ocean. And to add insult to injury, every octopus you see is probably a virgin because once they get laid, they die. We already saw what happens to the mother, but where did daddy at? Once the male octopus mates, he basically just gives up on life. The male octopus that's catched in his V-card will swim around catatonically until he either gets torn apart by predators or dies of starvation as his body falls apart due to senescence.
The condition or process of deterioration. It literally just starts falling apart. How does this system work? How is octopus not like extinct by this point? Better chances than me pulling that 5-star in Genshin for real, for sure. They don't even got a pity.
Not like it really matters because most female octopus are bigger than the males and sometimes they'll attack and cannibalize him during. But one thing's for sure, if his date doesn't put him out of commission, his post-nut clarity will. Octopus don't live long, but for the months they're alive, their entire existence is a jihad.
Octopuses have a relatively short life expectancy. Some species live for as little as 6 months. Octopus reproductive organs mature due to the hormonal influence of the optic gland, but result in inactivation of their digestive glands. Seems so... What's the opposite of optimal?
Octopus don't live long, but for the months they're alive, their entire existence is a jihad. Now you know why Squidward couldn't give a if a paid him. But at least with the octopus, it just seems to be really bad luck. They may be a victim of circumstance, but at least you get the idea that nature didn't go out of its way to screw them. Not like with this bird. Kiwi bird is probably
Kiwi
the best
bird? That's such a cute name.
proof that evolution ain't perfect. This tiny bird is actually part of the rat-type family. And this cookout includes ostriches, emus, cassowaries, and the rhea. But unlike his bigger cousins, this bird that shares its name with a fruit is about 18 inches tall and no more than 7 pounds.
It's so cute.
It's kind of like having cousins 6'3", 6'4", and 6'6", yet you came out looking like Tory Lanez. Like your family's tall enough to fit in an NBA locker room, yet you get it from a chair and stay the same height. But of course, nature
You're the baby of the family.
wasn't done screwing with this bird because like its relatives, they can't fly. Totally flightless, and despite being related to ostriches, a Jurassic
It stays as a chick forever.
reject and a bird that literally won a war against Australia, Kiwi's about as defenseless as the fruit that got named after it. Basically, you're looking at a bird that can't bird. The kiwi is such light work that they can only survive on islands without any mammalian predators because they're really a couple stray cats away from being put in the history books. And somehow, that's not it. Because nature shrunk everything about this bird. Everything except the eggs they have to push out.
No, that looks like death. For this small thing to push out that ginormous thing, that looks like death.
Of their body. Despite being about 60 times smaller, kiwis have to deal with eggs nearly the same size as an ostrich's. And at 20% of its body weight, that would be like the average woman birthing a 35-pound baby with the same equipment. It's such a hell to live that the egg actually rearranges the bird's organs and stretches its rib cage. There's too many things wrong with them for me not to think nature had serious beef with this bird. Especially when you realize the kiwi's closest ancestor was the elephant bird, which was about 10 feet, 1,600 pounds. So yeah, they got nerfed bad. At least they didn't get hit as hard.
If they're gonna get nerfed, I feel like everything should have gotten nerfed. Along with the size of the egg it has to push out. Oh my god.
Hard as, say, the sloth. For being completely honest here, the sloth has almost nothing going for it. Because they insisted on eating nothing but leaves, their diet makes them one of the slowest animals on the planet.
It made one of the funniest characters in Zootopia. But oh my gosh, I can't get over the kiwi bird's life. It's so tough. It's so little and vulnerable. And then it can't fly. Where are these birds? I've never seen them around. Kiwi's gonna hate reading the patch notes. They're like, please, no more. Okay, but let's go back to sloth.
Because they physically can't afford to spend energy they don't have, because going into debt would mean death. It's to the point where baby sloths have to quite literally hold on for dear life, because if it falls to the jungle floor, the mother likely won't waste the energy trying to get it back. And that's because if you're a sloth, leaving this tree is the most dangerous thing you'll ever do. Sloths only poop about once a week, and when they do, they'll climb out of the tree and get on the ground to do it. Why they don't just drop a deuce from the trees, I couldn't tell you. Nobody knows what goes on in their heads. But this means about half of all sloth deaths involve getting clapped on the toilet like Elvis. One thing sloths have going for them is that they're so mind-numbingly slow that algae actually grows on them, giving them free camouflage. But there's a catch. There is always a catch. When one of your biggest ops is an eagle with quite literally some of the best eyes in the world, wearing a moss blanket isn't gonna amount to too much. And you know evolution was actively f***ing with them because sloths are actually really good swimmers and can hold their breath for 40 minutes, longer than dolphins and seals. But it means almost nothing when most of the time they go swimming is by accident when they fall out of a tree. And that weak-ass doggy paddle might save them from drowning, but it won't save them from getting murked by an anaconda or a black caiman. But the really sad part is, sloths could actually be way better than this. Its close relatives, the armadillo and anteater, are able to put the same claws that it has to good use, and anteaters have even been known to swing on jaguars. You have a homicidal vacuum cleaner that has put jaguars and people in coffins, and then you have a moss blanket with a face.
And then like sloths, like they may have the claw, but then they don't have the speed. They're like trying to slash the enemy, but it's in like the slow-mo. It's just not gonna scratch.
Just like the kiwi, the sloth used to be better than this. Megatherium, aka the giant ground sloth, was in the same weight class as elephants, and they actually knew how to use those claws. So much so that if Ice Age were realistic, Sid would have worn Diego's ass like a fur coat.
Wait, is this like the ancestor of the sloth?
Much so that if Ice Age were realistic, Sid would have worn Diego's ass like a fur coat. But its massive size ended up screwing it in the end, as they basically got hunted into oblivion by humans, leaving us now with the virtually defenseless, dead-eyed, slower than molasses algae apartment that we call the sloth.
Wait, how did sloth survive? But how did this one not survive?
But its massive size ended up screwing it in the end, as they basically got hunted into oblivion by humans, leaving us now with the virtually defenseless, dead-eyed, slower than molasses algae apartment that we call the sloth. You know that thing on TV where it's like someone gets a genie that grants—
I wouldn't be able to fly. Granted, you're dying of cancer. Of course you can be co-pilot as your dying wish. No!
grants wishes, but only does so in a way that horribly bends them over in the end, and the moral's supposed to be careful what you wish for. That basically sums up this next animal, because—
Wish I didn't have to clean my room. Oh my gosh, no. What happened to the next animal?
because it looks like it got finessed by a genie in one of the most disrespectful ways possible. This is a fiddler crab. Male fiddlers have one giant brolic claw whose only purpose is to get a female's attention. Any crab shoes are made
one
based—
claw? Why do they only have one big claw and not balance it out? Because I feel like it looks really heavy. That looks like as big as their entire body. So when you're walking, so hard to balance.
On who has the biggest claw and therefore can pass the best genes to her clutch of eggs. The problem is, that is literally the only thing this claw is good for. Because that claw is too big to pick up food, the male fiddler crab can only feed himself with that smaller claw.
It's a shield. They got the shield and sword build.
Massive claw is actually a disability that means the males either eat half the food or take twice as long as the females. The only problem with that is that these crabs only eat during low tide, and the longer the crab spends eating, the more likely they are to end up as someone else's main dish. In the evolutionary arms race for female validation, the male fiddler crab is more likely to end up getting eaten by gulls, raccoons, reptiles, and sometimes even bigger crabs. And since the females enable this by being attracted to the bigger but less functional claws, the fiddler is now trapped in a vicious cycle.
I see, 'cause the girls like the big claw, but then the big claws is a major nerve for the guys to survive because it makes them inefficient. This is not good.
By preferring males with a trait that quite literally gets them put on a shirt, the females indirectly screw the next generation.
Yeah.
Gotta be careful what you wish for, especially if you're this next animal. Because the peacock has the same problem on steroids. We can all agree that the peacock is the biggest flexor in the animal kingdom. And
When I was little, I thought that these were the girls. And then later I learned the male peacocks are the ones that are like colorful and they attract their mates this way.
rightfully so. And just like with the crab and basically every other aspect of life, bigger is most certainly better. The more colorful and eye-catching, the better the peacock's chances at bagging a peahen. They'll even shimmy their tail feathers in a way that hypnotizes any female watching. But like I said, never make a deal with a genie. Because the good news is a peacock showing off will always be the center of attention. Bad news is sometimes that attention comes from a 700-pound assault weapon with stripes. And because those tail feathers are so heavy, not only can't the peacock see behind itself, even if it does see death coming, it takes them longer to get off the ground and out of the tiger's reach.
Oh my god, it's so big.
Just like with the crab, the peacock's biggest flex is often what gets it buried. In a cruel twist from fate, the peacocks that are safer from tigers are usually the ones that get less attention from females. So by having a preference, the peahens doom their future children to a fate of ultimately ending up as a tiger's toothpick. The peacock and fiddler both got handed massive L's from nature, but at least you can see the thought process behind it. Having huge claws and fancy feathers attracts females, so technically it does serve a purpose. In comparison, the Luna moth got shafted for no reason at all. To make a long story short, adult Luna moths don't have a mouth and therefore can't eat. The only thing keeping them alive is the energy they stored as caterpillars, but once that runs out, so does their time. Luna moths live for about a week, just long enough to reproduce and doom their children to the same fate of a non-consensual hunger strike. If you ask Google why the Luna moth doesn't have a mouth, it'll tell you because its only purpose is to mate. Which is really nature not giving a fraction of a about them. Yeah, that's cruel. Question is, what could possibly be crueler? Well, if you know what this is, you probably have the answer. This is a sea louse. It's a member of the Caligidae family of copepods, which is basically just a bunch of small crustaceans. You probably noticed that for the peacocks and the crabs, it was the guys getting the worst of it. Apparently, nature believes in a weird form of equality because right now it's up for the girls. The horror show starts when a male sea louse kidnaps a much smaller female and then forcibly drags her into what I can only describe as a crustacean sex dungeon, where he can have up to 20 other victims also trapped. It's at this moment where this movie loses its rating because the male will forcibly impregnate every last female in his burrow, and this often involves penetrating her abdomen. Don't worry, it gets worse. As her brood of children that she never asked for begin to grow, they decide to start eating their way out. Eventually, the mother's body splits open as her nursery of psychopaths rush out of her now mutilated husk of a corpse. This might be one of the only times where the babies abort the mother. She doesn't even really get to give birth, her children just bring her death. You might be wondering why evolution would even give this nonsense the green light. Well, the newborn sea louse are entering an ocean full of danger, and having a full meal before they make it out on their own apparently increases their chance of survival. And by cannibalizing their own mother, it's basically a home-cooked meal. Somehow, this isn't even the worst birth on this list.
No,
That title
that's so disturbing. It's like a horror movie. Hate that. Hate that.
of death is actually better than what they go through. Female hyenas evolved a pseudo-penis that's so similar to the real thing, it's actually difficult to tell males and females apart.
What?
This is actually a female. Only problem is, it's not just for show, they actually have to give birth to that thing, and yes, it's every bit as painful as you think. And just to somehow make it even worse relative to the mother's size, hyenas have to give birth to the largest cubs of any carnivore, and they have to do it through a penis. A good amount of first-time mothers don't even survive this because the process involves rupturing and splitting open the pseudo to make it easier for the cub. But the cubs don't get it easy either. About 60% of hyena cubs will suffocate on the way out and become past tense before technically even joining the present. And you would think because
The canal that the baby has to go through is unnecessarily extended for the female.
the mother and the cub, that evolution would have patched this. But apparently nature and Lion King have something in common when it comes to doing hyenas dirty.
I feel so bad.
But if we're talking about an animal that got done dirty,
If there's a hyena cub with a mother, the mother like actually survived. That's crazy. That is such a bad design. It can't get worse than that.
this picture kind of speaks for itself. Matter of fact, this is probably
Oh, their own horn is coming out and actually poking into their skull.
gonna be the thumbnail because this is nature at its grimiest. A lot of y'all probably knew this animal is coming just from reading the title, but for those of you that didn't, that was the skull of the babirusa. It's a wild pig found in Indonesian islands like Sulawesi. If you already knew that, it's probably because of those teeth. Those tusks penetrate out of its snout only to do a complete 180 and head right back towards its face.
This one curved into a circle, so I guess maybe that's like the best you could hope for.
The male babirusa can't wear down this hellish overbite or he doesn't lose them in a fight, then the teeth will end up growing right back into his head, penetrating the skull and ultimately piercing the brain.
Wait, so these grow back, right? So it's actually beneficial for them to lose it?
The worst part of it all is that by the time it gets clapped by its own dental plan, the babirusa's probably already had children and therefore passed on its bullshit to its kids. It's a lot like Parkinson's. Okay, hear me out. The problem with Parkinson's is that it usually develops late in life, usually around the age of 60. And patients can have it for years without being diagnosed. So by the time they do find out, it's possible they could have already had kids and grandkids that they could have passed it off to. See the problem, right? The only good thing is that it's somewhat rare for a child to inherit Parkinson's from their parents. The babirusa, not so lucky. And as long as females find big tusks attractive and as long as the tusks only murk them after
Its actions is like a handle almost because it's in there.
they've had babies, this pig is going to be screwed eternally and evolution can't even stop it. But when you talk about being sodomized by the fleshy phallus of nature, you're probably talking about cheetahs. If you watch Tirzu, if you're watching this, you probably do. You probably heard him say that cheetahs are
I've heard of Tirzu, but I've not watched any of their videos.
F-tier garbage that either need to be buffed or just vaulted out of their misery. I love cheetahs, I really do, but out of every animal on this list, evolution might have bodied the cheetah the hardest. And
How?
for one
Cheetahs are OP. I can't picture how cheetahs could have been nerfed. Because they're fast, they got those fangs and the claws, they camouflage with their dots. Maybe because they can't turn because they're too fast.
simple reason. Cheetahs are really fast.
Yes.
That is all they have. Cheetahs are a textbook example of why you should never dump all your evolution points in one skill, because you'll just get bent over in
But
every
why?
other aspect of life. Because they're built for speed and absolutely nothing else, cheetahs often get bullied by other predators, especially lions
Just
and
run
hyenas.
away.
And because cheetahs have to expend so much energy just to make a kill, it forces them to rest right after, which makes it really easy for other animals to just step in and run their pockets. But for real, if you're a cat and a bird that literally only
Look at
eats the
the
dead is
birds.
able to
They're
run you off, you
crazy.
got a lot of problems. Worst part is, cheetahs could easily avoid all of this. Leopards are also lightweight solitary hunters that occasionally get their food stolen, but they're able to carry their kills up in trees where they can't get harassed by scavengers. But in the evolutionary race for speed, cheetahs evolved non-retractable claws to use as cleats to keep traction while running. Which is why cheetahs can't climb trees, so they gotta get violated on the ground. Cheetahs are such pushovers that one hyena can successfully rob several cheetahs right in their face and then dare them to do something about it. Cheetahs compromised everything for speed, so now they get to speed run through life. About 70% of cheetah cubs born in the wild will be 6 feet under before their first birthday. And just to add on to
What? Oh, so cute. And they even have like a hint of blue in their eyes. That's so pretty. The cheetah cub mortality. The mortality rate for cheetah cub in the wild is about 70%. There are only an estimated 75,000 to 10,000 cheetahs. Oh, that's not a lot.
And just to add on to that, because why the hell not, thanks to genetic bottleneck, a majority of the cheetah population is highly inbred.
A sharp reproduction in a population due to environmental event. Reduction. Total opposite of what I just read.
The majority of the cheetah population is highly inbred. What you're looking at is a cat that
Oh, inbred. Oh no, because there aren't a lot of them, and then that probably causes genetic mutation.
doesn't really know how to cat. Because instead of roaring like lions, tigers, and leopards, the best this spotted doormat can do is chirp like a bird. Matter of fact, if you YouTube it real quick, you'll find they make every sound that isn't a roar.
No way!
And that's how you know evolution went out of its way.
Sword cat.
Cheetahs have been around for about 3 million years and decided they were just gonna IM speed their way through life. And because of that, unless it's a 100-meter dash or a bird call contest, this overgrown house cat loses every single time. Obviously, there's a lot of good things about the cheetah, but not nearly enough to justify the abuse they go through. Which is probably why a majority of cheetahs in captivity experience severe anxiety so bad that it prevents them from mating and they need an emotional support dog. Which is cute, don't get me wrong, but it's another reason why cheetahs are dangerously close to being the pandas of cats, and that's not something anyone wants to be. And don't get it twisted, I don't enjoy roasting cheetahs, I actually really
That's such a good comparison. It's a good comparison to make to pandas.
love them, but if nature has favorites, this Cheetos mascot isn't one of them. And those are 10 animals that got the middle finger from evolution. I'm not gonna lie to you, this video was low-key a pain to make. So if you liked the video and you'd like to support this channel, my Patreon's gonna be in the description, but please, don't give money if you can't afford it. Because honestly, I don't need money. I just wanted to cover my crippling Wendy's addiction. Subscribing doesn't cost you anything, so
Fair.
think
Yeah,
about it.
subscribe. I don't know why though. The China one didn't shock me as much. If he was like, "Oh yeah, they're fast, but that's all they have." But the other ones, like the hyena, that sucks. This sucks a lot. This is just a terror. I didn't know. Now we know.